Welcome to CivilNet. My guest today via Skype from New York is documentary filmmaker Adrina Grigoryan. Adrina, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Adrina, you are taking part at the Commission for the Status of Women at the United Nations that takes place each year. And you had the fantastic opportunity to present your documentary film called Pavagan at one of the parallel events that were taking place within the framework of the CSW. Tell me, what was the subject matter of the event itself?
Basically, during this week for the Commission on the Status of Women, there are panels happening around the United Nations where thousands of women's organizations have come to discuss different issues pertaining to gender. Our panel was organized by World Vision and Armenian Relief Society. And we were discussing discrimination before birth, which is about sex selection abortion, specifically in Eastern Europe, using Armenia as a case study. And basically, Armenia, with the UNFPA, Garik Hayrapetyan and his team in Yerevan have taken a leadership role among the region to address this issue.
And that's what your film was about, isn't it? The film is called Pavagan, as I said earlier. And there has been an increasing, perhaps alarming trend taking place in Armenia, abortions based on gender.
My film is called Pavagan, and for most people who don't know, in Armenia, once you have one daughter and then you have the second, it seems like it's too much for a family. So they name Pavagan for these second or third girls that are born into a family. Pavagan is normal as a girl's name. In a sense, it's sort of this label that women are enough or girls are enough in our society. I decided to make a film about this issue because it's an example of the worst form of gender-based violence that it occurs. You're not even giving a chance for that girl to be born. And in Armenia, what's really scary is that the implications it has on the national security of our nation. If we're not giving birth to future women, future mothers, then who's going to be giving birth to the future population of Armenia? And so that was one of the main key points that I wanted to educate Armenian people about, and not just Armenians, but just any country that deals with sex selection abortion, because people usually think that it's just their own family's choice. They're not understanding the collective implications of that. Another issue in our film that we try to address is this idea that the choice of what's done to a woman's body is usually taken away from a woman and given to her husband, her mother-in-law, or just the societal pressures that have influence how this woman thinks about what should be done with her body and the choices she should make about whether or not to abort a girl fetus.
Are there women in Armenia that are actually being forced against their will to have an abortion once they have determined the sex of?
Yes, of course. That's how most of them are done. I work with a women's organization in Goris called SOSA's Women, and for the past 5 to 6 years, we've been working with women on their health issues, which include sexual and reproduction issues. When it comes to reproductive issues, a lot of women have been using abortion as a form of contraception for the decades in Armenia. And in that act alone, they don't realize what implications they are doing to themselves biologically and psychologically. So though women are having abortions in general, in a way, it's a choice they're making, but they don't realize that that choice has actually been made for them by society when society doesn't educate on other reproductive contraceptive methods. So after the fact, I spoke to a lot of women that are a little later in life. They already have adult children, and only now are they understanding the implications the number of abortions they've have on them. Because when they see their daughters dealing with similar issues, I think it reawakens the conflict that happened within themselves. When it comes to gender, of course, it was a more touchy subject. The issue of gender selection or sex-selective abortion is fairly new in Armenia, though it's been happening since 1991 at the collapse of the Soviet Union, and with the availability of sonogram and ultrasounds. No one really talked about it until around 2009, 2010, when UNFPA started looking at the numbers and seeing that
there's a trend happening, right?
Yeah,
more boys.
China, being the largest country in the world population-wise, is #1 with this issue, and Armenia, being one of the teeniest countries, is like #2 with this issue. This alarming number and this alarming comparison has triggered a response nationwide by Armenian organizations to help launch an education campaign to start talking about this issue and educating people about the implications.
Right.
So as we began doing this, when you talk to women, most of the time they do it matter-of-factly. For them, they don't understand that there is a difference. They are like, no, we need to have a boy. This saying in Armenian that the fire in a hearth can't burn out. It has to keep burning, and it's only the birth of a son that helps the fire in the hearth going on. And when we talk to certain women who say, you know, what about your daughters? What about the future mothers? How do you expect the continuation of your ozg if the women aren't born? They just sort of shrug their shoulders and they say, well, we need a son, you know.
Yeah, it's always about the short term. Nobody's really thinking about the long-term implications of this practice. You know, abortion, gender, sex selection as a form, you know, all of these things are really taboo still in Armenia. Maybe not so much in Yerevan, but certainly in the regions and in the villages. And you had the audacity to make a film about it. And not only make a film about it, but then to take it to the different cities and everywhere else outside of Armenia as well. How has your film been received by ordinary people who saw it?
We've been traveling all around Armenia to universities, through different organizations. Again, we always emphasize that this is not a women's issue or a gender issue. This is a nationwide issue. This is an issue of national security. This is everybody's issue because it deals with the future population of Armenia, and it deals with severe violence against 50% of the population, which is women. Sex selection abortion is considered one of the highest forms of gender-based violence. We're really lucky that we've had incredible response, not just by every average person we've spoken to or shown this, but even from the Ministry of Health. And I'd like to also add that CivilNet's own Sarkis Ghazarian was the DP on this film and has gotten nothing but rave reviews from all the world, like the international festivals we've shown it at. I'm really happy that the production of this film from day one has included men and women, the participation of men and women, and everyone has been really, really encouraging and is listening with open ears.
Sure. Adrina, it must be really exciting to be taking part at the Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations, and especially being part of this event that was part of the commission that was called Discriminated Before Birth, Sex Selection as a Form of Gender-Based Violence. Tell me, how was the experience? Were there a lot of people who came to the panel? What were the reactions? Were there a lot of questions that people asked?
First of all, I have to say that I wasn't the only one on the panel. I had the great honor to be sitting next to renowned individuals who've been working on this issue for many years, including Dr. Christophe Guillemoto and Hayrik Karapetyan and Yeva Avakian and Hasmi Kevorkian, who've been working on gender for many years on different levels, academically, through the UN, through World Vision. I was there to discuss how art and social media can affect social change and how a tool such as a documentary film can actually be used to educate a wide audience. For me, it was important to share the information that was being discussed in the panel with the rest of the world. So I tried to talk about it through social media. I tried to talk about it before the event. I'll continue talking about it after the event, because the important thing is to see that this issue that's happening in Armenia and in the Caucasus region in Eastern Europe is being addressed by the Armenian UNFPA. They're taking a leadership role to start educating campaigns on this issue. And we were really fortunate enough to have the largest conference room, and it was packed with men and women. One question that popped up that was the most interesting for me is that someone who's not really familiar with the Armenian context or with sex selection abortion, she just really simply asked, well, if they're worried about population, then why aren't they giving birth to more mothers? Like, doesn't that make sense? And I said, of course that makes sense to you and I, but in the Armenian context, usually most women are just worried about what happens in their immediate family because they're worried about the threat from their mother-in-laws or their husbands or society in large, who look down and say, oh, this woman wasn't able to produce a male heir, you know? And they don't really understand what the collective implications of that is. Like, if you don't have a daughter and your neighbor doesn't have a daughter and no one else has daughters, you're going to have a nation of men. And what does that look like?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as an artist, as a documentary filmmaker, it is so impactful when you do when the format is visual storytelling, when you have actual women talking about their experiences. So I'm assuming that you also showed your film during the event, yes?
Well, very good question. I didn't show the complete film. The film will be premiering at the Socially Relevant Film Festival.
Organized by Nora Armani, right?
Yes,
right.
Yes, March 17. I showed, so the important thing about my film Bavakan is that the film itself isn't the end goal, but we recorded the process of the filmmaking and shared it with our followers on Facebook. And so people could see that this is an issue that's important and that we're addressing it. It's not necessarily important that everybody ends up watching my documentary. It's important that they find out about the issue. Apart from that, the documentary film that I set out to make was not reportage and is not based on statistics. I wanted to use the women who have dealt with gender selection abortion to be part of the solution. They are not portrayed as victims. It took me years to get women to talk openly on film. And let me add that in Armenia, we don't show their faces. And when we show the film, in the international version, we still respect most of their privacy because people don't understand that this issue is very taboo, very sensitive, and could have severe consequences for them if their families found out that they participated. So we don't show it in the regions that they come from, and we don't show any of their faces, and we try to sort of hide their identities, but in a very subtle way we're showing it in Armenia.
It's absolutely incredible what you're telling me, and I certainly commend those women's courage, even though, as you said, you cover their faces, but I'm sure there's always this fear at the back of their mind and, you know, in their hearts that somebody will know that it's them talking about this issue, that it really is so taboo, because some traditions die very hard, especially in conservative societies like Armenia is.
Well, Hasmi Gevorkian mentioned in her talk that if this is a learned behavior, then it could be unlearned as well.
Absolutely. All behavior is learned. Adrine, I'd like to thank you so much for waking up early in New York City to talk to us about this really fantastic achievement for the film, for taking part at the CSW at the United Nations. Wish you the best of luck, and thank you for joining us here at CivilNet.
Thank you so much. This is part of it, you know, as long as we start educating people, the viewers that watch CivilNet, and thank you for allowing us to share this information with your audience.
It's our pleasure. I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest was documentary filmmaker Adrine Grigoryan. Stay with CivilNet.